Psalm 22 is another psalm of David. But not just another psalm. It is a psalm, once again, with raw and emotional honesty. An honesty that very few of us very seldom dare to express. But it would be good if we did. If we actually went down deep and gave voice to the deepest feelings, the deepest convictions, the deepest pain that we have, and bring it up before God. The Psalms, all of them, give us license to do that. But we don't. And yet when we do, we make a discovery. I'm not going to explain that at the moment because I think we have to work our way through this psalm in order for that discovery to become meaningful. So once again, as in so many psalms, we have this level of authenticity as expressed by David and by others. But the crisis in this psalm is unexplained. We can't find an analogy, we can't find a parallel in the life of David that rises to the level of this crisis. And the reversal that takes place is also unexplained. Beginning in verse 22, and later I would ask you to read the whole psalm. We shared excerpts from it this morning in this reading we just did. But somewhere between verse 21 and 22, it's almost like something is missing. What happens to David to take him from this place to an entirely different place? How does he rise up like he does? Because nobody starts as low. And in the life of David, there is nothing, even in his dramatic life, that corresponds to the depth of this crisis. This is worse than anything David experienced, as tough as David's life was at times. And this is a person, the subject of this psalm, who is a lot like David and yet much greater than David. There's something missing in the middle, and I think it's missing intentionally. I think it's left out because it leaves us anticipating. It leaves us leaning into the future. It leaves us hoping for a sure word from God that describes how in the world we bridge from this place of absolute abandonment to this place of joy and of certainty and of confidence. How do you get from here to there? The question is posed, the drama is laid out in front of us, and we are left with the question ringing in our ears. There's also a change that takes place starting in verse 22 when you shift from the pronoun I and my to a discussion about him, a picture of someone else, an intruder into the psalm. And that's left unexplained as well. Well, let's walk through it for just a moment. That first line, there is a depth of desperation in that first line, unmatched in literature, and unmatched really anywhere in terms of the willingness to express a level of agony that's almost impossible to speak. In fact, when you feel this, you can't talk. All you have is a groan. All you have is a feeling, and it's continually sinking you. My God, why have you forsaken me? Does that sound faithless to you? Does that sound like somebody who's given up? Well, on the surface, it does. But if you think about it for a moment, and the lines that follow it, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? I cry out to you at night, and you do not answer. I cry out to you by day. I never stop crying out to you. I am not silent. Does that sound faithless? The truth is, there's an awful lot of faith in a person who will do that, who can do that. Does that make sense? My God, very, very personal. This is a person who's in a relationship with God. And therefore the absence of God is unbearable. But this is a person in relationship with God. God is not a concept. God is not a theory. God is not a doctrine. God is my God. And several times in the first few verses, you have this personal pronoun. You have this intimate relationship with the God who is now gone missing, who is absent, who is not here. And so it's even harder, it's even worse because of the level of faith this man has. Close to God, used to being close to God, generationally has been close to God, and God has, for all practical purposes, as far as I know, this person is saying, gone away. I cry out to you and I can't find you. I call out to you and you're not there. I look for you and you are missing. Have you ever felt it? If you don't know him, it won't mean that much to you. Oh, well, that's one more theory. I just have to write that off. I'll go looking somewhere else. I'll find some other friend. But there is no other friend like him. There is no other one that has this kind of power who can deliver you. And so all you can do is cry out to him. And if he doesn't answer, what do? You continue to cry out. My God, why have you forsaken me? It isn't suffering that he fears. And there's a lot of suffering in this passage. He can deal with the suffering if God is there. It isn't even death that he's afraid of. If God is there, he will handle death. He can face death. But if God isn't there in the suffering, in the threat of death, then there's a level of despair that nobody wants to even contemplate. And yet, this psalm dares to do that. To contemplate the absence of God in the face of all of these challenges. I can handle this. I can't handle the absence of God. I will suffer. I'm ready to do that if necessary, if you're with me. I will face death if you're with me. But if you're not with me, I am absolutely lost. Absolutely lost. In a conversation this week with a young lady that I've known for many, many years. I knew her when she was a girl. And now she's in her 30s. Married a man. Had a number of children, 5 children. And he left. Abandoned. She's got physical issues now, even in her 30s. In fact, she's just heard that she's going blind. In fact, I'm talking to some friends of mine who may have some information about what could happen, what kind of surgery, because this is a very rare condition. But I don't know that I have any answers. I certainly want to find them. But on the phone, and then in a follow-up email, there is this level of agony. It's not the divorce. It's not the absence of a husband. As much as that hurts. It's not even going blind that I couldn't tolerate. It's that question ringing in my ears, in my heart. Where is God? Where is God? And that's the right question to ask. Not to be consumed with circumstance, as difficult as they are, but the one who can deliver you, or the one you believe that can deliver you, or the one who has in the past delivered you, or the one that you hope will deliver you. What has happened to him? And why isn't he here? And if he's here, why can't I feel him? Why can't I know him? Why can't I talk to him? Why can't I be reassured? Where did he go? If you've ever felt that way, let me tell you something about yourself. You're human. You are human. There is no shame in being in this place. You are going, yeah, but I'm a person of faith. Well, if you're a person of faith, this crisis even becomes deeper. So if you're feeling it deeply, your faith is still alive and you are stirred, and you're hoping against hope for some resolution, though it seems impossible that it will ever come because God seems to be inactive and uninvolved. My God, my God, why have you forsaken me? Don't rush past that too fast. Some of us are living there right now. Somebody next to you might be living there right now. Because I believe in God, I am crying out. Because I can't face this without Him. If I know He's there, I can make it. If I don't know He's there, I don't know how I can make it. Don't rush past this too fast, either as a way of denying your own pain or a way of pushing somebody else off. Don't hand them a quick answer. Don't give them a cliche. It'll all work out. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. We all know God is there. We all know God exists. Here, let me give you a formula that proves it. That doesn't help. It doesn't work. It didn't work for Job when his friends came around and tried to reassure him. It made it worse, as a matter of fact. So David is doing something rather daring here. And then in verse 3, and I almost want to just take the whole morning and do verses 1 and 2. Because I want us to feel permission to express the agony of our soul. Because we have that permission. Because the Psalms gives us license. Because God invites it. Bring it on. Tell me where you are. Even if you're not sure, I am here. But then the psalmist takes the high road, having gone to the depths. And though he has no answer yet, at all. He has no reassurance because of anything he sees. There's no evidence in front of him in this moment that God is doing anything about his problems. But he remembers this is who God is. He's the Holy One. Which means He is above and beyond my expectations and my understanding. And I'm going to count on that because I know who He is, even though I don't have any evidence to support that in the moment. Emotionally, I'm here, but my vision I raise to here. This is the God who in history has taken care of us, who has showed up when we need Him. Not according to our sense of timing, but according to His own purposes. This is the God who cares. This is the God that we have trusted. This is the God that I have trusted. And so David, the psalmist, rises to the occasion even while he's struggling desperately down here. I know who you are. I have a hard time believing it in the moment, but I'm going to say it because I know it's true. You are the Holy One of Israel. You are enthroned. You are sovereign. You have a purpose that you are working out. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't like it. I don't want to stay here, but I know who you are. And then he goes on, having reestablished that perspective, even in the midst of his agony. Then he goes on and talks about the troubles that are surrounding him. And the imagery is grotesque. This is a horror. He goes from this intimate cry of pain to this lofty reverence for God that then gives him the ability to find the courage to recognize what's going on around him and to just call it out. Because all of these animals, the bulls, the lions, the dogs, the wild oxen, they're all seething with hostility. These are men, these are human beings that are surrounding David. And again, it's hard to actually figure out how this fits into his life in terms of what actually happens to him and what they are intending to do to him. I mean, yes, David has had his enemies, but at this level, and to be surrounded personally like this goes beyond the experience of David, though he's had a taste of this. In fact, every human being has had a taste of this. If you've ever felt surrounded by circumstances or by people who are against you, or if there's been betrayal nearby you, you know what this feels like. And the bestiality of the enemies in this passage is frightening beyond words. And so David, once again, is crying out about what's going to happen, because they are insulting him, they are mocking him, they are taunting him. Taunting him so that his suffering becomes an object of derision for them. They are taking glee in his suffering. The worse he does, and they see him as a worm and not a man. He has lost his dignity in the eyes of the people around. And it seems like everybody around has turned against him. Everybody, even former friends, have turned against this person. Everybody is against him. And God, by the way, is silent. The God I know, the God I love, the God I believe in, he is silent. He is inactive. He is not protecting me. And then at the end of 21, as we are sinking along with the psalmist and saying, where do you turn? Where do you look in such a place? Where do you go? Not even sure I can trust my friends. Not even sure I have any friends, any real friends anymore. And those who are my friends don't understand me. And those who are my friends give me shallow comfort with their feeble attempts to provide answers. And there are none. The only answer anybody could give would be the answer that God himself could give. And his only answer would be to become present to me. And he's not here. I mean, this is the lowest place a human being can go. And it's even worse than what David experienced. In fact, taken all together, all of us, no matter what our experience is, we shudder at the plight of this man, whoever he is, in Psalm 22. And then there's a sudden turning here. And it's unexplained, like there are verses missing, like there's an event that's unaccounted for here. Because there is a kind of expanding joy that is described here. Coming back to life that is described. And it's inexplicable. How did this happen? I mean, we know the source of life is God. He's been absent, so he must show up again somewhere, somehow. But it's not described. It's not explained. But he does. And life comes back. And there's an expanding kingdom, if you will, kind of boundaryless kingdom of God's presence. And there's the poor are now hearing the good news. And even the rich, and sometimes in the Bible, of course, there's a lot of critique of the rich because of the abuses of the rich, but even they get in on this. And the nations, the families of the nations, it says at the end, they hear the good news of what has happened to this man, and somehow it means something to them. There's something about this man being delivered from his suffering and from his death that affects them, that puts them in a different place, that gives them now language to overcome their own suffering. And then there's even the description about how this good news, this gospel, this message is going to go to generations not yet here, to those unborn. It's going to continue to reverberate. It's going to reverberate apparently around the world. Now I'm hoping that some suspicion is growing up in you right now that this Psalm 22, is not simply about the life of David, because it clearly surpasses his experience. And that David himself cannot fulfill what is described in verses 22 and following. That any recovery that David had, and he did bounce back from defeats, does not rise to this level, does not have the implications that are described at the end of chapter 22, Psalm 22. And so you have to reach the conclusion, whoever you are, whatever your belief, that this is a messianic psalm. This is a projection into the future of someone, a son of David perhaps, a next generation who will fulfill the conditions here. And it's not a pleasant prospect to consider the fact that someone will go into this depth of suffering. There's a prediction that God will abandon this person who will cry out with an excruciating tone in the face of such suffering, in the face of the threat of death, and far worse, the absence of God in their life. Who is David talking about? The Psalm. If you read it carefully, and if you jump ahead in history, 1,000 years, David is about 1000 BC. The practice of crucifixion has not yet been invented. Invented probably by the Persians about 500 BC. Perfected by the Romans now in the 1st century. And so we have this picture. And depending on how you count it and how you interpret it, there are at least 12 and perhaps as many as 15 prophecies in this psalm about a crucifixion, which is the most horrible way to die, yet invented by mankind. It is meant to draw out the torture. It is meant to maximize the shame. Cursed is he who hangs on a cross. They pierced me. They put nails in my hands and my feet. That's the description in Psalm 22. They cast lots for my clothing. All of this, again and again, happens on that fateful day, that fateful crucifixion day. And the words of Jesus himself, quoting the psalm. And by the way, if you know anything about the physical process of crucifixion and the long, slow death, the hardest part of it is the ability to breathe, or the lack of ability to breathe. You slowly suffocate. And you exhale by rising yourself up, and every time you do that, of course, everything hurts that much more. And so you begin to lose the ability to exhale, which means you lose the ability to speak. And we know that that man who hung on that cross on that fateful day spoke 7 times. And one of them was, my God, why have you forsaken me? As if all the sins of the world were mine. If you look at the very last line of Psalm 22, we didn't read it here. But if you have a Bible, by the way, I think you should all have a Bible. You probably knew I was in favor of that. And the last line says, he has done it. So close, a paraphrase of, it is finished. So Jesus has gone through the suffering. He has gone through even the death, the gates of hell. And he has borne the sin and borne the agony of all of us. And this fills the gap before verse 22 that describes what happens, because God was doing something unbelievable, absolutely shocking on that day with this man, this Jesus of Nazareth that he sent, his own son given for us, poured out as a sacrifice for our sins. He identified with us. So wherever you are, he identifies with you. Well, he was God. He just kind of danced above all this. Oh, no, he didn't. In fact, he felt it more deeply. His nerve endings, his conscience, his sense of being rejected by everyone around, including his own friends. Oh, no, he felt it more deeply than you and I ever could. He identified with us completely. He bore our sin. He bore our rejection. He bore all that happens to us. He took it on himself. And then he won a victory on that cross. This is God's justice. This is God's judgment. And ultimately, this is God's victory given to us. And so at the end, as it says in the psalm, he has done it. It is finished. It is accomplished. Are you in a place of agony right now? Maybe it's buried because you don't want to deal with it, you don't want to feel it, you don't want to say it out loud. This is the one who understands that. This is the one who is walking with you right now. This is the one who is calling on you and tugging at your heart to say, pour it out to me. Because I have made provision for this. And though I may seem absent at the moment, though you may be blind to my presence at the moment, though I may be working out a purpose you cannot possibly understand in the moment, you trust me. You take the high road. You have reference because You know who I am. And if you don't believe it quite, because your spirit is weak, take that leap of faith. Where else will you go for the words of forgiveness, of eternal life, of strength? Oh, strength. Give me that strength that I need in the moment. And I'll wait until you answer. Even as I'm being clawed to death by these animals, whatever these circumstances are, whoever these people are around me, I will entrust myself to you. This is heavy. This is very heavy. It calls for a drop-dead honesty on the part of each one of us. And then it calls for a recognition of the glimpse of hope that shows up here. That becomes so powerful it overwhelms all the suffering and all the agony by the end. If you can believe that, if you can trust Him, and if you can pour it out to Him and agonize out loud while you're on your way, then this song will become very, very meaningful. Would you pray? God, we are listening. We are struggling to understand how this song unleashes a truth that claims us and sets us free. That we have struggled and we are struggling. Yes, that is the case. That is real. And that we have a debt we cannot pay. We owe you too much. We have failed along the way. It isn't just enemies out there, it's enemies inside. And sometimes I'm my own worst enemy. And you have paid that debt too. And your love reaches us in Jesus because of the cross. Because of our Messiah, our deliverer, our Savior. And if we put our faith in you, if we trust you, as so many have, we will discover the truth of this song. We'll discover the truth of your good news coming to us through David and more impressively and ultimately in Jesus Christ.